just thought of major linchpin as to why capitalism doesn't work. There's a lot of people that defend capitalism, that defend Western culture and European culture. They're crazy. Or they're white. More than likely, they're white. The only people that I meet that say, I do not see any problem with Western ideology are white people. Here's the linchpin, here's the problem. So, let's say that you start a factory like HelloFresh. Or Wonder, it's like this meal delivery kit shit is like wildly popular right now. You're going to need a lot of labor. A lot of labor. So if we're just thinking about HelloFresh, you have millions of different corporations that require millions of different workers. I'm going to continue with this, but I'm going to just throw this at you real quick. A factory is a lot like a farm. A corporation is a lot like a plantation. The majority of the life on a plantation is livestock and cheap labor, or free labor, quite honestly. There are only very few farmers on the plantation. There are only very few owners on the plantation, which means that there aren't many people actually benefiting and actually making the money needed to sustain their life. Now you make this problem in 2022. You have all these plantations, all these factories, all these corporations in which you're going to need so much cheap, undervalued, underserved labor, which requires destroying the educational life of people, or making education so expensive that the majority of people cannot achieve a full education, can't repay that education, or don't even bother to consider getting a higher education because they work. So the money's fiat, it has no real value. They spend their entire life working for a corporation that will never be able to pay them enough money. Where is the benefit and gain to the people working within the corporation, working within the plantation, working within the factory? There is none, because I've worked those jobs before. You work for 10 to 14 hours every single day, not to mention any sense of commute that you have. We have guys coming from New York that have to take 2 trains to get to work, to get home from work, to come to work in Newark, New Jersey. You know, that shit's crazy. That's like hours out of their day, not to mention working. And it was a huge problem for them. There is no way for the majority of people to improve or increase their life within capitalism because we're pulling on the money within very few people. And like what happened on Cannibal Island, if you knew about what happened with, this is a really fucked up story, but the Serbs and Stalin during World War II. Stalin had an island full of Serbs. They went there and they lived off of 5 pieces of bread a day until eventually there was no more bread. The solution to that was to give each person flour. To give them flour with no means to cook the flour, with no healthy way to eat the flour, and people began to die of dysentery from using the river water to make a little flour smoothie, if you can, a flour slurry, if you will, mixing the flour and mixing the river water together. After people got done dying of dysentery, they began to eat the bodies of those people. Once the body of dead people were reported and found, anyone that was caught being a cannibal was murdered, was killed on sight. But that didn't stop the cannibalism. These people had been transported there. Hey! Be quiet! These people have been transported there for months and for months. You know, with no light, with no food, with no anything. By the time that they got to the island that they were on, they had already lost their humanity. They had already lost any sense of hope for a greater life. My equation to that is crime rates, prostitution, women that would slit your throat in a back alley, that would get other men to jump you to rob you blind, and mainly how the poor does not help and assist the poor, how black people do not help and assist black people. Because when you're living within this Western ideology, you have to first understand that Europeans have lived in a feudalistic system for the entirety of their existence. The idea of only 20% of the people holding on the wealth while 80% of people suffer is exactly why the Europeans came to America to begin with. You can let people bamboozle you, fool you, trick you, say some other shit. They left Europe because in Europe already, and you can still see it to this day in Europe because it was never fixed over the past thousands of years, the white supremacy that these people feel is a sickness that is so deep. They will allow Europe to fall, they will allow America to fall, and bring the rest of the world down with it just to prove Europeans are superior. They will literally devastate and destroy the economies of other countries on purpose. Look at Russia. You need all these global sanctions to destroy the Russia economy after Russia completely rebuilt its economy after World War I, World War II. They need American intervention to destroy their economy. What is the excuse for the American economy being destroyed? What is the excuse for the British economy or the European economies being completely devastated and destroyed? We imprison and enslave all these third world and second world nations with debt backed by nothing, for them to be more European and to be more white. We gentrify black neighborhoods in America. We brutalize to kill black people for any given reason. We imprison black people for any given reason, harass black people for any given reason, on the basis of some sense of white superiority, but it's white people doing it. Eventually, people need to see that being white not only is not superior, but it's kind of a backwards culture to begin with. And just as you have now, if you look at the modern day MLM structure and the reason why MLMs aren't shut down in America, instead they're influenced and they're given a lot of governmental and politician support. The entire system is an MLM. The entire system is a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme in which very few people will benefit and make the money off of the efforts of the majority of the people working there. So again, like the factory, you join the factory, they promise you some sort of wage, but in reality, everyone else is making more money than you. The supervisors that do less work than you, that make sure that you're working, do less work than you. They're supervisors and managers that don't do anything, make way more money than both of you. The HR people make more money than you. Their bosses make more money than you. And essentially, what you're really looking at is a plantation. That's the given. That's already very automatically there and present. But what you're really given is a system in which you're influenced, bred from a very young age. Think of school systems, for instance. In a school system, you don't make any money as a student. But yet your presence there and your existence there is what fuels the entire public education economy. You get it? So you're trained to accept that from K through 12, being present at somewhere in which you are not making any money, in which the return on your investment is very negligible, in which all the real and actual work that you're going to have to do to improve your life is done outside of school, homework, projects, studying for examinations, studying for standardized tests. You know, all that work is actually done outside of school. And you're literally just being incubated for other people to make money off of you. So you're taught that at a very young age. You live your entire life like that, your entire life. But then every time someone speaks out and complains about what's going on, and this is going back to the MLM structure, there's something wrong with the malcontent. There's something wrong with the person who has not benefited from the system. But the reality is that they're only really pointing fingers. The reality is no one's benefiting from it. No one's benefiting from it. Because even at the top of the food chain, they're not actually doing any work to improve themselves, to grow better as people, to really get better interacting with people. They're really kind of stuck, worse than you are, because at least you're moving around and you're getting some sense of benefit of doing the work and just like as a student, you're doing all the real work to learn, to improve, to get to a better place and station theoretically. But your only real value to this system is by staying within the system as long as possible before you ever see those benefits. You got to get a doctorate degree to look through capitalism and see that there's something wrong. You have to study the very nature of capitalism at a very high level to understand that there's something wrong with the system of capitalism. You have to study white people in European history at a very high collegiate level to ever understand what is wrong with European history. Because without the context of looking at other nations, without the ability to look at other nations and see what's going on and what their history is, to see what other nations have done to reach this point and are doing at this point, you're going to keep looking at China like, oh, the social credit system is so great. No, it's tyranny. It's all tyranny. That's all the problem. But the power is so far removed. And what is the power? Is the power the ability to control people's lives? No, the power is the ability to control your own life. The power is the ability to think for yourself. To think for yourself free of the system. To be able to move free of the petty rewards. You're never fully aware of what's going on. If you never discuss your paycheck with other people, you'll never realize how other people are getting paid other than you. But if you really never discuss and sit down with other people that work like you, all the attention is given towards appeasing the managers, appeasing the supervisors, appeasing some higher up, having this sort of resentment and hatred towards people at your level, a sense of contempt for people at your level. And everything that we do to get to some higher point away from other black people. You reach middle class income status, and now you move to a white neighborhood. What happens to your black neighborhood? All these people with college degrees, all these people with money to fix up the neighborhood, all these people with the acumen to build businesses to improve the neighborhood, go to the enemy, improve life for the enemy, and they ensure the devastation and the destruction of the black neighborhoods. The black neighborhoods aren't like this by accident. And quite honestly, when you go look at a lot of these neighborhoods where people don't want to live, they're very beautiful. They're beautiful. You have trees, you have a great suburb to raise your kids in, ideally. What you do not have is the financial backing and the acumen, what you'll see more than anything too. The houses that are nicest, or as you perceive to be the nicest, all have gates around them, closing themselves off from the people around them, isolating themselves from the people around them. Everyone else has wide open field. So the houses that could be very beautiful have these gaudy, disgusting, ugly gates because they don't trust their neighbors. Because instead of getting to know their neighbors better, they work outside of their neighborhood, outside of their community to get to know other people to get the fuck out. Hopefully this is breaking through to some people so they can understand. Like, it's very hard. Can you imagine, look at your relationship, love life, and then we can leave after this. You got your wife, you have your kids. Can you imagine spending all your time taking care of someone else's kids? Could you? And then what kind of shape is your kid going to be in? How is your kid honestly going to feel with you out there with every other person's kid? Every other person's leaving all your time, your attention, like a school teacher, to other people's kids. You come home, you're too exhausted to even love and take care of your kid. Or a pastor. You're so busy saving all these lives, apparently saving all these lives. To come home, your daughter's a whore. Your son has zero discipline. Because you're not there to her. The people that you are actually stored over, you don't protect them. You want to protect the people that you have no responsibility over. The people that really need to be taking care of themselves and the people that have far more than you do. I hear this all the time with black people. It's like, why are you only doing things for black people? Why is it always about black people? Because it's never been about black people. Because nothing has been done for black people. We've been existing and surviving this entire time, subsisting off of our resourcefulness, subsisting off our due diligence, and more than anything, our perseverance, and resourcefulness. If I didn't say resourcefulness already, then let me reinforce that shit. The resourcefulness of black people is why we're here. We're not here because white people did anything for us, because they didn't. They made it as hard as they possibly could for black people to survive in America to this very day. They make it as hard as possible to hear black men out, to listen to black men and learn from black men, because they are trained and programmed to hate black people. The only black people that have any place within white society are the black people that are white supremacists and completely conform themselves to think whatever white people do is right and whatever black people do is wrong. That is a fact. I'm not sure if I've very accurately described to you the problems in white culture and white society, because I'm not a racist like they are, and I don't spend all my time of day bashing and humiliating other races and other groups of people to feel better about myself. I don't need to do that. But if you look back and you watch this video again, their entire corporate structure is European culture. What we're living now in capitalism isn't some new ideal that Adam Smith created. Capitalism is almost a reactionist, knee-jerk reaction to the end of slavery, especially since one ideal rises up directly after the second ideal. At the end of slavery, now you have this capitalist talk. America was supposed to be a democracy. But yet we spent the Cold War, we spent World War I, World War II spreading capitalism. Was it for the benefit of the poor white men that were dying overseas? Is it to the benefit of the black men from the ghettos looking for a place within American society? No. None of us benefited from any of these wars. None of us benefit from any of these wars at all. It's to the benefit of the richest people in society, as every war in human history has ever been. But when you don't have a fair education, because they're shutting down the public education within your neighborhoods to build prisons, private prisons, mind you, not even prisons owned by the state, prisons that are for profit to enslave and imprison and take their freedom away from other people. Because it's a business now. It's not about justice. It's a business. That's all the same thing over and over again. Prison industrial complex is a corporation. HelloFresh is a corporation. The school system is a corporation. It's all ran the exact same way. It's all ran with the people that do the most work receive none of the benefits, and the people that watch them do the work or own the work being done receive all the benefits. It's honestly insanity when you get down to it. But when you spend all your time preaching the system, teaching the system, and people are watching, like the benefits of it are real. The benefits of being a white supremacist are very real, especially being a black white supremacist. I got the offer for it. It's very real. You don't got to worry about money anymore. You just got to worry about your soul. You don't have to worry about camaraderie, I guess you would say, or fraternity, so much you would say. You have to worry about being understood. You don't have to worry about loneliness. You have to worry about full acceptance, full self-acceptance. Because white culture is essentially Satanism. With no filler, no cuts, that's why they have such a hatred towards God. They have such a hatred towards righteousness. Because everything they do is wrong. And they know it's wrong. But they're not educated enough, and they don't know enough about white culture or white people. They spend all their time focusing on black people and non-white people. They don't know enough about themselves to identify the issues in European culture to say this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. No, they really don't. So it is up to an outside perspective to see it, to say something, and to call it. But I was thinking about that today, and those are the issues that I see with the modern world, especially white society and corporatism. Because it's very hard to illustrate these ideas to people who are completely brainwashed against these ideals. They're completely brainwashed to believe in capitalism in Western society. But when you really sit down and ask them, like, what are the benefits from capitalism that you wouldn't be able to receive in an egalitarian society, it really just comes down to the white supremacy of it all. When you ask these white supremacists, well, what are the benefits of white supremacy that you wouldn't receive in an egalitarian society? They can't tell you because they were brainwashed and abused from a very young age to be white supremacists. Teaching your kids to be racist is child abuse. Teaching your kids to hate other people is child abuse. This isn't about hating white people. I have a lot of white friends. This is about having sat down for so many years talking to white people about their issues in society, their problems in society, and how the problems of white people are ultimately completely ignored in order to reinforce this agenda of not only ignoring the problems of white society, but inflicting the same problems on other societies. So the original issues of the European immigrants that came to America never get fixed, never get solved. The issues of the white people that lived here during the labor revolution never gets fixed, never gets solved, because they keep focusing on the white supremacist agenda. They keep focusing on the capitalist agenda. But there is no humanitarian agenda. I'm telling you this for a fact because I studied political science. There is no humanitarian agenda within democracy, or the Democrats, or the Republicans, or the Libertarians. These are not there for the people. These are there for the white supremacists. The Democrats are there for the Satanists. The Republicans are there for the white supremacists. There is no ideology here for people. Christianity and Catholicism were hijacked by white supremacy. There is no religion here for the people. So what you really have ultimately in America are people living without any God, without any real connection to their God, without any real bounding to morality or ethics, without any real goal to live for or aspire towards other than being wealthy, which it's honestly kind of an insurmountable task for a lot of people. Even if you don't have a lot of money to get rich, you at least need a very strong support system, and that doesn't exist for a lot of poor people. A lot of poor people, I'm going to bring this back full circle, do not support and help other poor people. The majority of people that get rich today get rich by only designing and selling products that the majority of people will never be able to afford to serve the rich. You can't have a society that only serves the rich, because this is the other side of the problem, is that there are no real rich people. There aren't a lot of people that have a very high income and do not have an equal amount in expenses. Do you understand me? There aren't a lot of people that make $100,000 a year that do not exceed $100,000 in their expenses. There aren't a lot of people with $1 million in a year or $1 billion, look at Amazon, $1 billion business. The majority of that goes towards expenses. How much money these people earn individually pales in comparison to how much money they have to spend to keep the business running. Because a business has nothing to do with capitalism. Businesses come from God. Businesses, the concept of business within itself is a biblical concept that far exceeds Western civilization. But this idea of there's no apprenticeships, there's no way to learn without spending money that you don't have. We are the original idea that I made this video. I'm glad to finally get to it. People's lives are purposely destroyed, purposely hindered, in order for there to be an uneducated, cheap source of labor. that has existed since Babylon and Mesopotamia, since Sumeria, since Sargon of Akkad, and it has not stopped to this day. The reason why capitalism and white supremacy do not work is because it requires destroying the lives of people so they will either die or go to prison in order to ensure that there's uneducated, cheap labor. That's not a society. It's not civilization. That's hell. That's hell on earth.